What's happening, everybody? Today is March 25th, and we are going to dive into the NBA and take a look at the standings as the season is coming down to an end. The regular season, that is, because the playoffs are about to start in less than a month. Cannot wait for that, especially with the way the seedings are starting to kind of take shape. A lot still to be decided. A lot of good games tonight, which is why I wanted to come on and, chat about essentially where everybody's at and what the potential matchups could be. So we'll take a look at the standings, talk about which teams are hot, which ones aren't looking so good, and honestly, what I expect to happen once the playoffs roll around. So why don't we just get right to it? So first and foremost, we're going to take a look at the standings here. Okay, so the standings here, you can take a look. We're going to look at the Eastern Conference first. Now, Detroit is the number 1 seed. They've clinched the playoff spot. They are essentially cruising because the Celtics are 4 games back. Every team essentially has less than 10 games left. So chances of teams catching up, not very likely to the Pistons. Pistons are the 1 seed. This is the thing with Detroit. All right. I feel pretty good about the Pistons. Cade Cunningham is out right now. He'll be back. People think for the playoffs. Even if he misses the first few games in that first round, they'll end up playing a play-in team. So whether that is Philly or Miami or Orlando, I think it's okay. However, Charlotte is in that play-in area, and if they make the playoffs, I think they can be dangerous just because of how they've been playing, how they've been clicking. Do I expect them to win? No. But remember, there was a fight earlier in the year with the Pistons. They've shown that they're that, essentially it's like that young man finally, bulking up and getting ready to take on the grown men. And again, Pistons team without Cade Cunningham is vulnerable. So I'll be looking out for that. But that's really the only story with the Pistons. They're the number 1 seed. Much respect to them for having a great season. All right, the Celtics are the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. They are kind of battling back and forth with the New York Knicks for that number 2 seed in the East. And they got a huge win tonight. They took on the Oklahoma City Thunder, full strength Oklahoma City team. And it didn't look good at first. The Thunder got off to a pretty good lead in the first half, in the first quarter, but the Celtics came back. They got the win. Look, I can't call them a sleeper team, but I've been saying this all season long. The Celtics, because when they get Jason Tatum back, are going to be dangerous. Well, they have Jason Tatum back. He's already played in a handful of games. Yes, they haven't been playing as great basketball now that he's been back, but that's to be expected. They got to find their footing with him. I mean, he's a vital piece of their team. And now that they have had a handful of games, plus another 8 or so games to wind down the season with him to get going, I'm not worried about them even in that first round anyway. Whether, again, if it's Philly or Miami or Charlotte or the Orlando Magic, I'm not worried about the Celtics in that first round, even if they're still working things out with getting Tatum back. And again, at that point, he'd be close to 15 games already, probably close to 20 having played, and I expect that team by that point to be rolling. I think the Celtics, that's my team that's going to come out of the Eastern Conference. I just don't see a world or see anyone that is really going to, beat them. The Knicks would be the closest. And yes, the Pistons, I give them their respect, but the Celtics have been there, done that. Defense, championship coach, like it'd be an upset is essentially the way I would put it. Obviously, if they end up meeting the Pistons in the conference finals, I do think the Celtics would be favored. So we'll see what happens there. Again, the Knicks are, similar, just right there. Kind of, look, they're either going to be the 2 seed or the 3 seed. Not worried about them in the first round. And for a big reason is because whoever the Knicks end up playing in that first round, if it's the Knicks or the Celtics, whoever ends up being the 3 seed is going to play the 6 seed. And that's either Toronto or Atlanta or Philly or Miami. Again, even maybe Charlotte finds a way to sneak all the way up there, or Orlando. Like, not worried at all that they'll get past that. And then obviously that 2-3, when they face off against each other, that's going to be a hell of a series. And I kind of wanted to say the winner of that series will represent the Eastern Conference, but I'm not so sure about the Knicks, because if they play the Pistons, well, they played last year and the Pistons took them to 6 games. I feel more confident saying that with the Celtics. We'll see how it plays out. Cleveland is number 4. They're going to be the 4 seed. They're 3 games back of New York. They're 4 games ahead of the next team in the standings, which is Toronto. Cleveland, this is where they'll be the 4 seed. Really, for them, kind of a nice spot, because if they play, again, Atlanta or Toronto, 4-5 matchup, I expect Cleveland to get through that. Although if they play Atlanta, Atlanta's hot. Atlanta has been rolling. They're 9-1 in their last 10 games. I think they're 15-2 since the All-Star break. So That's a potential upset there just to look at. Okay. I don't think it'll happen, but if there is one, that's the one I would expect to maybe happen. I still think the Cavs should get it done. Donovan Mitchell, like, you can't have this, the same thing every year about him not, getting to the conference finals. Now they have Harden, which coincidentally, it's not like he's had the most great playoff success, but I think that team is deep enough, experienced enough that I think even if they play Atlanta, they'll beat Atlanta. And then they take on the Pistons team, which they played well this season. So Cleveland has matched up well with them. So there is a path here for Cleveland as well. And then if it's a conference finals matchup between Cleveland against Boston or Cleveland, New York, well, anything goes against, again, if it's Boston, I just think Boston's my team to beat in the Eastern Conference. All right, number 5 is the Toronto Raptors. Look, as a kid that grew up watching the Raptors, as a Raptors fan growing up, I'll just say this. It's a nice story. This team, I don't want to call them frauds, but if they're the 5th seed, they're a fraud. It's not a 5th seed where, like, you think, all right, the 4-5, it should be a close playoff series. Toronto smacks the teams that are at the bottom of the standings and gets beat by all the good teams, essentially. All right, they've had a couple solid wins. They beat the Pistons recently when they had Cade Cunningham. That was a nice win. I think they beat the Rockets as well. But, like, other than that, whenever they played Boston, New York, Denver, they've lost. Like, they just don't have it against the good teams. Again, it's a good story. Last year, they completely missed the playoffs. If they can get into a playoff seed here, that's great and all, in progress and all that. But they're missing a dog. It was obvious with that Jamal Shed moment. If you didn't see it, you should look it up. Jamal Shed gets crossed over by DeJounte Murray against the Pelicans. And, I mean, DeJounte Murray disrespected him, straight up looked at him while Shed was on the floor, talked his crap, and no one really did anything. That team needs a dog. They need a James Johnson, a fighter on there, an Isaiah Stewart type, and they just don't have that. So I don't see them really doing anything in the first round. Maybe they'll get one win. Sadly, that's the way I see it. Atlanta, we talked about, again, they've been hot. So they're from the bottom seeds, they're the most dangerous team in my opinion right now because they've been playing really well. Then you got Philly, Miami, 7, 8. Charlotte, like we talked about, 9 seed, and then Orlando's a 10 seed. The only team I take serious out of that bracket from 7 through 10 is really Charlotte and Miami, because truth be told, Eric Spoelstra and the Heat have always found a way, right? And I think that they'll upset someone in the first round? Not really. But if they play the Pistons without Cade Cunningham, they could make some noise. They could give them a battle. Again, it's the Miami Heat are bipolar. Sometimes they're hot and they look great, and then sometimes, like as of recently, they lost 4 straight. So I don't know what to think of them. They came off a win against Cleveland last, and that was it. So, all right, we'll switch over to the Western Conference. Western Conference right here. Oklahoma City Thunder, the number 1 team. Like I mentioned earlier, they just lost tonight to the Boston Celtics. Not too worried about them as far as them being ready and what they're going to do moving forward. But I am worried about them about this year. That West is stacked. And, last year the Denver Nuggets took them to 7. And this year I think they might have some trouble in earlier rounds. That doesn't mean that they won't get out of the earlier rounds, but I don't think that they're just going to be able to sweep their way through or not have much competition. I think there will be some moments in the playoffs where you'll be thinking, damn, they're about to get eliminated maybe. But Shea is great. SGA is amazing down the stretch. Put the ball in his hands. Let him take you home. But it will be interesting to see because Spurs are the number 2 seed. They're only 2 games back. They might even there's enough time, right? So they won the head-to-head matchup against the Thunder. So there's a world in which the San Antonio Spurs are the number 1 seed. All right. So we'll see. But the Lakers, do I give them a chance against the Thunder? Not really. But the Nuggets, do I? I do. The Minnesota Timberwolves, honestly, Ant can be Superman at times and be put on that cape and go nuclear. So, I think the Wolves could even give them a scare. The Rockets, I don't take too seriously. There's something just off with that chemistry. But you got the Spurs, you got the Nuggets. Again, there's a world in which they'll have to play both of those teams. That's why I'm talking about the Thunder maybe this year having a little bit more trouble. Okay, like yeah, maybe the first round series they can get by, but that second round series, if it's the Nuggets, well, damn, that's the team that gave you 7 games last year, and you know, we'll see how that goes. And if you get through that to the conference finals, well, damn, you might play the Spurs, and they've won the head-to-head matchup, and they're right on your tail for the number 1 seed. So again, I think they will be tested. But again, also in OKC's defense, they now have the experience. They've won the title already. They have that, understanding of how these playoff series goes, the deeper you go in the playoffs. So we'll see how that goes. The Spurs, again, we're kind of talking about them right now. So they'll either be the number 2 seed or the number 1 seed. And I take them serious. I think they're a contender for sure. How could you not? The 9-1 in the last 10 rolling. Same as the Lakers, 9-1 in their last 10. They've been playing good ball. It's weird with the Lakers because it's not LeBron's team anymore. It's Luka's team. It's been that. And the fact that LeBron has almost been okay with taking the back seat has been just completely a game changer for the Lakers. He's essentially doing, I don't want to say what D Wade did when they had the Heatles team and the Big Three in Miami, because D Wade essentially then said, all right, LeBron, you'll be the lead and I'll be the co-star and Bosh will be the number 3. LeBron's kind of in a way, if you watch the game sometimes, it's almost like he's willing to say, all right, Luka, you're the lead. And you know what? If Austin Reeves needs to be the co-star, that's fine. I'll be the third lead here. I'll be the third person. And the fact that he's been willing to make that sacrifice, understanding his age, understanding his limitations now, which there aren't many because he's still hooping. I mean, the Laker team, you got to kind of take them seriously too, because they got Luka. And there's any given moment that Luka could become the best player in the playoff series, and they got the guys around him with LeBron and with Austin Reeves that at least give you a fighter's chance. Now, Marcus Smart will be left wide open for threes. DeAndre Ayton, will he be all the way there, focused defensively, doing what he's got to do? We'll see. But they have a chance. That's all you can really say. Denver, look, I want to say that they're my sleeper team and the team that I think could actually make the finals here. But time's running out, right? And so they got to make it happen. They're finally healthy. Yesterday or the day before, I think they had a game where they played in Phoenix. I think it was last night. And they finally had their full team healthy again. So if they can kind of ramp up here with the next 8 games, that we'll see. Maybe that gets them rolling. And then if they show signs of life, of Denver basketball, where they actually can play defense, listen, then I wouldn't put it past them to be the team that, knocks off the defending champs and ends up being in the finals and maybe winning it all this year. But at least the thing is, a lot has to still happen where this team has to gel and not a lot of time left for them to do that. I will say Cam Johnson is probably the most slept on important player in the playoffs in the Western Conference. If he can be the Cam Johnson that we have seen in the past, then I think Denver is, that's it. Then at that point, you're thinking Denver is going to be the team, okay? But he has not had a great year. His 3-point percentage hasn't been terrible. He's 42.8. But he's had kind of a down year, 11.9 points per game. But if he can get rolling here, he's been injured for a lot of the season, but if he can get rolling, last year with Brooklyn, he was at 18.8 points per game. If you get that kind of Cam Johnson, and really the stats don't even look that bad now that I'm looking at him. It's just if you watch him play, there's been moments where he's had the game-winning opportunity and he's missed it in a shot that you expect him to make, and that's what you brought him there for. But if he becomes that takes Denver to a whole nother level. So they're fringe contenders right now. Again, I'd be willing to put them as contenders. And the Wolves, similar with Anthony Edwards, anything can go. He's same like with Luka. He can become the best player in the playoff series in a snap of a finger. The guy's just incredible. So we'll see how the Timberwolves end up playing out. The Rockets here at the 6th seed. Again, chemistry has been just up and down. They win a couple, they lose a couple. I don't feel great about them. Honestly, if they play the Lakers in the first round, I would pick the Lakers to win. The Lakers just swept them, essentially, and it wasn't even a home and home. It was 2 games in Houston, and the Lakers won both. And usually when that happens, if the road team wins the first one, the home team usually always wins the second one, and it did not happen. So we'll see how that goes. I was there for that game, and it just, again, there's something with the Rockets that doesn't seem to click. We'll see how it goes. So, and then obviously the play-in here, we got Phoenix 7, the Clippers number 8, Portland number 9, and the Golden State Warriors number 10. Look, I think it's going to play out exactly how it looks right here. I think Phoenix and the Clippers will be the teams that make the playoffs, which, again, Phoenix is essentially the Toronto Raptors of the Western Conference, as far as I think it's a nice story this year, but I don't expect them to be able to do much in the playoffs, except the expectations were way lower for Phoenix at the start of the season. So if they end up getting swept in the first round, it is still a good season for Phoenix. Look, they essentially built around Devin Booker. The coach Jordan Knott has shown that he can rally guys. I mean, they're 40-33. I think their over-under at the start of the year was like low 30s, and they have like 8 games left. So this is like a 44, 45 win team. Like, they're having a great season. And if they end up taking on the Spurs, tough matchup. It's Victor. And you know what? They do play tough against the good team. So give the Suns their credit. I hope they make the playoffs. They've been fun to watch this year, especially coming off the last train wreck of a couple seasons they've had when they had Durant there and Bradley Beal. And then the Clippers, well, you know what? With Kawhi, you know, he's a great player, but I don't give them much of a chance if they end up playing the Thunder, which is probably the likely matchup, or the Spurs, but you never know. Again, they're a team of veterans. Maybe they kind of pull it through. The Warriors, I don't really see getting out of the play-in. And Portland, hey, maybe because they're younger and they get hungrier for the play-in and they end up sneaking into the playoffs, and that would be a hell of a story, especially with the fact that they were the team that started off this season with a huge story with their coach essentially being arrested for gambling and all that poker stuff that was going on. So, again, a lot of fun stuff to watch here down the stretch. Like I said, my player to watch, I guess, in the Western Conference that I think low-key is super important is Cam Johnson. If he can become, you know, a reliable, just essentially Michael Porter Jr. from last year for the Denver Nuggets. Because remember, when they took on the Thunder, it took them to 7 games last year. Aaron Gordon had a hamstring issue, and Michael Porter Jr. had a bum shoulder that he'd been playing through. And those guys were a shell of themselves. So if Cam Johnson can be healthy and essentially be the Michael Porter Jr. for this team of this year with better defense, hey, maybe they do have a chance. And in the Eastern Conference, my player to watch, I mean, it's easy for me to say James Harden, or you could say Jason Tatum, so it's like one of the two. But I guess if I'm going to pick a wild card, give me Jalen Johnson. The guy has been a stud. First time All-Star with the Atlanta Hawks. And honestly, I think I think they're going to miss the play-in completely and just be a 5 or 6 seed, probably a 5th seed, because I do think Toronto's kind of falling apart. So if they take on Cleveland, I think they can give them a series. And again, if Jalen Johnson can become that superstar, well, damn, then at that point, hey, it's going to be one hell of a series that I still would expect to see Cleveland pull out, but we'll see. All right, that's it as far as previewing the playoffs and seeing where teams stand right now. And I'm taking a look at the live scores right now of games going on. See, like Toronto is taking on the Clippers, and they're down 16 in the third quarter, like 78-62. Can't take Toronto seriously. All right, like I just can't. I'm sorry. I wish I could, but in the playoffs, I mean, I just don't see much for them. And then this is the thing with Denver. I mean, Denver is at home right now taking on the Mavericks, and they're up 133-126. Jamal Murray's got 48 points, and you're giving up 126 points to a 23-49 Dallas Mavericks team. Like, that's just not acceptable if you are going to be a legit playoff team. And that's the thing that I just get. It's what gets me with this Nuggets team. It's the defense that's just not good. I will say Aaron Gordon is not playing, so that is huge. He's arguably one of their best, if not the best defender for them. So that matters. But again, it's just even without Aaron Gordon, you shouldn't be giving up 126 points to the Dallas Mavericks with still over 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then the other matchup is the Rockets and the Wolves, and that is in overtime with the Wolves losing at home right now by 5 to Houston. So tough to say. We'll see how it plays out. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, comment below. I'm always in the comments chatting with y'all about sports. I love this kind of stuff. So we will see what happens here as the season continues to wind down. And I'll talk to you guys some more here soon. I'll pop out another podcast in the coming days. I'll talk to y'all on the next one.